Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Skill RPA. So, as part of RE framework series, and we covered like building of the skeleton, and also we covered the config file and config dictionary object, and also we covered the assets. So let me just mark this as completed. And in this, we are still need to work with the queues. So in this today's session, we will start building the individual frameworks, and we'll look at the queues when we are building the get transaction data individual workflow, which we are going to use it in terms of like invoking this. So let us go back to the RE framework. So if you go to the init state, we build the first run sequence, and inside that we are invoking init all settings, and we covered with like config file and building of the config dictionary as well, right? So like we need to build few more workflows, like which is going to cover us. So we'll add the sequences here, clicking on add, and we'll take a sequence, and this is to kill all processes, create, and this process or this sequence of workflow is to kill all the processes where we will be whatever the applications we will be using there. So we'll use this log message info killing all applications. So what this workflow will do is, let me just rename the activity as well. What this activity or workflow is going to do is, before we start up our process, so in the first run sequence itself, we want to kill all the processes, because we want to make sure that there is no process is running on the system. Like let us suppose if we are automating on Google Chrome, so we need to kill that process before we are initializing our process, in order to avoid the conflicts, or like making our system clean before we start with the process. So we just need to, like what we are going to do inside this is, let us open this workflow. There is some error. Let me just close this and reopen this. Let's open this. So what I'll need to do is, we just need to use kill process activity. And in case if we have more processes, we just need to pass on the either process name or the process object. So how we can get the process name? So if we just right click on the task manager, you can see these processes, right? So if you can just expand this, properties, here you can see this chrome.exe. So this is the process name, and we just need to pass on this chrome.exe in order to kill this application. So this is how we will be configuring our kill processes. And in case if you want to kill this Zoom, this will go to the Zoom and we'll go to the properties. It's zoom.exe. So this is how we will be using this kill all processes, and we will be invoking this in the first sequence itself. So now it is done. Let me minimize this first run sequence. And after this, we need to add one more workflow to the framework, which is Init All Applications. So this Init All Applications, what it will do is it will open the applications which we required in the process of automation, automating the process. So in that case, whatever the applications we have, we will be opening that. Like if you want to log into a system and make some changes into that, like that is as part of our automation process. In that case, what it will do is it will just open the application and log into the application, and it will make the things done. Log message, opening applications. So this is how we require the init all application, and we are going to invoke this init all applications here. And so we are dealing with the credentials, right? Like we need a credentials whenever we want to be like want to log into any application. So before logging into this application, here we will be using get credential activity. And here we are going to pass on the credential name. The credential name is already added to the config. If you remember, in the init all applications, from each of the sheet, whatever we are passing as an argument, right? So we will be maintaining our credentials in the settings sheet. So there we will be adding the config name, like the key and value. The value is nothing but the credential name. So we will be passing that credential name here, and we will be utilizing this credentials in the init all applications. So this is how we will be we'll be having the structure for the initialization state. And with this, we almost completed with our initialization state. And this is the bare format I can say the RE framework, but still we have a few more things, the add-ons which came up with the ongoing versions of the UiPath. And this is the basic requirement in order for us to start with our RE framework implementation. And whatever the add-ons we have got, like with the ongoing versions, those features we'll see later. And for now, we're done with the initialization state in terms of framework components, each framework component. And let us build other workflows of the framework. We have one more thing, which is close all applications. So we will be using info. So close all applications, like whatever the applications we are using, once we're done with our automation and when we are stopping our process, it is always suggested that we should close the application so that the next process could not impact, or it won't get impacted. So we need to close all the applications. So we will be invoking that in the end process. And here we'll be using this close all applications. And we will be putting this in the try catch, because there might be a possibility that we may not able to close the applications for some application related reasons. So we will be handling that exception. And inside this catch block, what we will do is we'll use the kill all processes, so that in case if the application is not closed and if any exception occurred here, then that will be going to the kill process. And even for a safer side, we will be putting even this also under exception try catch, and we will be using a log message, and we'll be writing that failed to kill the applications. And before coming here as well, before going to the kill process, we can use a log message here. failed to close the applications. So this is how we will be doing our end process. So with this, we completed both initialization state and end process as well. And we can write the annotations to look much more better and understanding. You can just need to click on this add, like we just need to right click annotations. We just need to click on add annotations. So is to read the configurations and open the applications. So we just will write some description as an annotation so that like it will be giving a idea for us or a picture that like what actually we are doing in this particular state. And we just need to right click annotations, add annotations. To save, close the applications and fill the applications if failed to close the applications. So this is our end process. Now we will be coming to get transaction data state. In the get transaction data state, what we generally do is there is one activity which is called as should stop. The output of this will be a Boolean variable, whether to stop the process or not. Stop requested, which means in UiPath Studio, the orchestrator, when we are running the automation jobs, and if the job is running, let me do one thing. Let me just try to run a process. And let me select this robot. If I just start this, and here, if it is running, right? So there is two options. One is stop and the other is kill. In case if I select kill, what it will do is it will directly suspend the process, like whatever we are doing from the task manager, right? If we are trying to end a process from task manager, that actually reflects to kill. And in case if we select the stop, what it will do is it will continue the existing transaction. So let us suppose we are processing one transaction, and in between, if you requested to kill, immediately it will stop, irrespective, like whether it won't complete the transaction and it won't update the status also back to the whatever we are using. And in case if we select the stop, it will check here before getting the transaction. It will check whether it was requested to stop or not. If that was requested, it will go to the end process and it will close the application. So it's a safe stop of any process which we are executing, and it will complete its transaction in the process, and then it will come to the get transaction data state. And here, based on the request received from the orchestrator, it will go to the end process. So for that, what we will do is we'll just put an if condition, and we will be using stop requested. If stop is requested, and we will be writing a log message here, info level requested to stop the process. And we will be using an assign activity transaction item, and we are assigning it to nothing because we want to stop the process. So we didn't retrieve the transaction item. And in order to go to the end process, the criteria what we have is transaction item is nothing. So we just assign that value in case if the stop signal is received. So now it will go to the end process. And in the sequence, in the else condition, if the stop signal is not received, we need to retrieve the transaction data. So we will create one workflow here. Sequence. Get transaction data. And we are going to invoke this process here in this else. And what actually we required in this as an output or input. So here we need to give the transaction item back to the main from this get transaction data state. So we will be creating an out argument, out underscore transaction item. And the direction will be out and the type will be, every time I don't want to browse for that. So in order to get those immediately in this drop down, what I generally do is we have a variable, right? Transaction item, which is a queue item. I'll just select this and just close this. And here I can easily get that argument directly in this drop down. It is not necessary for me to go to browse types. So it's a queue item, right? And so here to get the transaction item from the queues, what I need to do is get queue item, sorry, transaction item. So we'll use this activity in order to get the transaction item back. So here in the show options, we will be using output as out transaction item. Okay. And what input we need to provide? We need to provide the queue name here. And these are like additional properties. Anyhow, like we just want to go with like we doesn't want to continue. I wanted to throw an error if it is failed on like returning the transaction zeta. So I need to pass on the queue name. That is a mandatory field. And reference, it is up to us whether to give or not. Like if we see the transaction items, right? Where is the queues? So I'm going to create a test queue. And I'm just, so when we are creating the orchestrator queue, right? So we can see multiple options and ignore about all those things. Okay. Because we can just define some specific schema of this item and all, or else like it will go with the by default. And so this is the retry. If you want to have a retry for the failed transactions, we can do that. So that for that, like we just need to enable check this box and enforce queue unique reference. Like if we doesn't want to add the data of same data again and again to the queue to avoid the duplication, you can just click this. Okay. And store in the encrypted format, like we cannot view the data, whatever is added. So we doesn't want to do both of this as of now. And we will just create the data queue. And once this is created, right, I'll just go to this transaction, view transactions. And here we have a reference column. So based on these references, if you want to fetch the data, we can pass in the ref. And for now, we doesn't want to go with anything. And even filter strategy, we doesn't want to go with anything. Okay. And here we need to pass on the queue name. So from where we want to get the queue name, there are two possibilities. The orchestrator queue name. One, we can give it like when we are running the process. And the other is we can fetch it from the config. So what we will do is for now, we will take it from the config file. And we can just have that like the whatever we are discussing, right? Like that we can have it later. So here, orchestrator queue name. The value is RE framework. So we'll just copy this and we'll put that here. So now we got the orchestrator queue name. So for this, what we need to have is we need to have the config. So we can pass in underscore config, or we can directly pass in the queue name as well. It's up to us, but I want to pass it as queue. And the type of the queue is config is it's a dictionary object. So we'll select that dictionary object. So now we got the queue and we are outputting the transaction item as well. So for this, we'll just click on this, open advanced editor. Here we can write in underscore config of the key name is this, whatever we given in the config and dot post. No, this is the actual queue name, but the key is this orchestrator queue name. We can give the orchestrator folder path as well in case if we are referring to a different folder of the queue. Like if you see here, right, it is connected to POC development and we are creating the queue in the same folder. In case if we are creating in some other folders, then in that case, we need to pass on the folder name as well. So now we got the transaction item and we'll put a condition here. If our transaction item is not nothing. So if the transaction item is not nothing, we want to have the transaction ID as well. And we can assign some other values as well. Out underscore transaction ID. Out. Just take this assign activity. Out underscore transaction ID. And we can consider this as now.toString so that like it will go with the timestamp, which we will be having unique all the time. So this is how our get transaction data looks like. And here in the main workflow, we'll just take each and every data, like we'll just pass on the argument variables. So we'll taking into the transaction item and we are passing in the config. And for this, we don't have anything right now. So we'll create that transaction ID. We'll click on OK. And the variables will just change the scope to main. Stop requested is good with the sequence, so it's not necessary for us to change the scope. So with this, we completed our get transaction data as well. And we can add the annotation. So till now, we done almost everything. Like we completed the initialization state, we completed the end process state, we completed the get transaction data state as well. And now we need to work with the process transaction. And the process transaction is something that like where we will be automating our complete process and whatever the logics which are related to the process, right? So everything we are going to have in the process transaction only, and we'll start building something. So we need to build two workflows. One for now, we can just have set transaction status workflow. Cancel this. Here we'll be adding a sequence. We'll create a flowchart for that. Set transaction status. And this is our workflow, which we want to create. And we'll invoke that and we'll build that in the later stage. And also process work. So that we can create it outside of this as well, not under the, we can create in the framework or we can create it outside of that as well. And you can click on add and the sequence. And in case if you want to change it to move it to somewhere else, also we can do that. Like we are going to invoke this process YAML here in the try block. And once it is successful, we will go with the set transaction status here. And in each and every catch block also, we want to have this set transaction status. Because either it is a successful or either it is a failure, we want to update the status, what actually happened to that transaction. And even under the system exception as well. So now we will be going to this process.yaml, and here we are going to create one input argument, which is in underscore transaction item, because we need to process, right? And for that, we need to have the transaction data. And also one more we will be creating, which is in underscore config, because whatever we want will be utilizing the assets or like whatever the data we have, right? So we need to have that here, and it doesn't have any output argument. It will have only input argument. So it's up to us, like based on our project, we will be changing it, and we'll just use a comment block here. and we'll write this is to place our automation workflows developed for process, all the business logic. So, and we will import these arguments here, action item, and the conflict. So with this, we completed the process as well. Now, the only pending thing is like we need to implement the set transaction status workflow. Like we done with the implementation of the complete RE framework, but the only left thing is with us is set transaction status. And in the next video, we will be looking at like how we will be building this set transaction status and how we can implement this based on the status successful or business rule or a system exception. So we will be utilizing this, like we'll be building this process as part of that. And from the next video, we'll look into this set transaction status. So if we track our status, like we completed this also, and in this, we just invoking workflows inside RE framework is also done. And the only thing is like building of the individual workflows is pending for the set transaction status. And once we're done with that, we are like we will be completing complete RE framework, and we'll try to modify the existing RE framework for the custom projects, and we'll start implementing on a small or simple use case. And also we'll look into like what are the new features like which came up add-ons to the existing RE framework with the ongoing versions, and we will learn those as well and the advantages of that. So once we develop this set transaction status, right, and we won't be reusing this existing whatever we done, and we'll take the whatever the RE framework template is there, and we'll see what are the new things came into that, like what are the other configurations we missed out in building this RE framework and how they are going to help us, and also what modifications we need to do in order to work that with other transactional data other than the orchestrator queues. So stay tuned and please subscribe to Skill RPA YouTube channel.